going on, everybody? Welcome to the Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and coming up on today's show, we got some great news and some bad news. The bad news being some concerning quarterback injury news. Tom Pelissero gave a big-time update on Carson Wentz and J.J. McCarthy, so we'll dive into that first. But then also, the NFC is absolutely wide open, and even though the Vikings, they caught the injury bug during the first 5 weeks, still them being 3-2, they can still accomplish everything they sought out to at the beginning of the season. Let's first start off with the quarterback injury news here, because right now, if I had to chalk it up, who starts this upcoming week against the Eagles, my gut would still tell me J.J. McCarthy, but it could honestly still be Max Brosmer potentially starting against the Eagles. This is what Tom Pelissero had to say, saying the Vikings quarterback situation is murky, to say the least. J.J. McCarthy, I'm told, got good work during the bye week. He should be able to return to practice this week, but McCarthy is still not 100% on that ankle. Minnesota has to see his mobility. They've got to see how that ankle responds, and they've got to make sure he is comfortable and in a groove from an operational perspective before they put him back out on the field. Meanwhile, his backup, Carson Wentz, is dealing with a left shoulder injury and could be limited this week. A lot to sort through to figure out who's going to be on the field next week against the Eagles. Now, Kevin O'Connell has made this crystal clear. J.J. McCarthy won't be out there unless he is 100% healthy. So this opens up the door to, one, if Carson Wentz, if that shoulder's good, I'm still guessing he would get the starting nod if J.J. McCarthy is not 100%. But still, we all understand if the Vikings want to accomplish, their main goal before the season of winning a playoff game, J.J. McCarthy gives them their best chance to do that. But he also needs to develop because as right now, J.J. still have only played 8 quarters of real football during the NFL regular season. So he needs those reps, but also they have made it crystal clear. If he is not 100% healthy, they will go to Brosmer or Carson Wentz. And guys, I'm going to be honest, this is going to be a crazy week. Like, if you need any more incentive to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications, we will keep you guys posted with this because right now we have no idea who's going to be the starting quarterback in a massive, massive game against the Philadelphia Eagles. Vikings 3-2 right now. If you could somehow find a win when you are a 2.5-point underdog at home against the defending Super Bowl champs, you move to 4-2. Number one, the playoffs are still very much, on the line for this football team, but also the NFC North crown. The Lions losing last night to the Kansas City Chiefs, they're 4-2, and the Packers 3-1-1. The Vikings still have a very, very good chance to go out there and win the NFC North, but they got to get a win this weekend. And with Carson Wentz dealing with the shoulder injury, number one, that's concerning, because he was obviously incredibly sore after that game against the Cleveland Browns in London. KOC said he came in the next day with a lot of soreness in that shoulder. Now, this is obviously not his throwing shoulder, so that's a good thing. But also, let's just say Wentz can't go. He's ruled out, and they still don't feel comfortable putting J.J. McCarthy out there, maybe even at 95% fully healthy. There's a chance that Max Brosmer legitimately plays this upcoming weekend. That is 100% in the fold. And I was kind of joking around with producer Dylan. If I had to chalk it up, who gets the start, I'd probably go 33% JJ, 33% Max Brosmer, 33% Carson Wentz, and then give 1% to the emergency quarterback Cam Akers. But it is fully on the table that Max Brosmer could potentially be out there. But what my gut is telling me, and just kind of reading, between the lines here, I still have a strong feeling J.J. McCarthy will start this week for the Eagles because I understand what Kevin O'Connell understands. He knows that J.J. is the guy. He is the franchise. He should be the quarterback that, should man this team for the remainder of the season because he needs to develop. And I know, some people are already kind of checked out on J.J. They're still, have some scar tissue from that Week 2 performance against the Falcons. Keep in mind, he had a kid that Thursday. He had to miss a practice. He had a makeshift offensive line. No Jordan Addison, no Christian Darrisaw, and even Kevin O'Connell didn't do him any justice in that game. I thought his play calling is pretty poor. But now, if J.J., even if he, at least if I was calling the shots, if J.J. is 90% healthy and his mobility isn't limited too much, I would roll him out there. Now, I wonder if this could be a little gamesmanship from Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings where they told Tom Pelissero, be like, hey, J.J., he's not fully out there for maybe that affects the Eagles scouting the Vikings offense this week because, it could be night and day. KOC even talked about it, how different the offense was in Week 5 against the Browns because, one, the offensive line, you had 4 backups in the fourth quarter, so he had to get, the pocket moving. He had to do some things where he normally doesn't do as a play caller, at least just in terms of play design in that game against the Browns. So there is a very good chance J.J. makes his return this week. That's where I'm going to probably bank on who's going to be the starting quarterback. But I'll ask you guys this. Who should start week 7? Are you rolling with the second-year quarterback, J.J. McCarthy? Type those 9s. Or if you're wanting the Carson Wentz revenge game, type those 11s down below. But also, if you're rolling with the UDFA from the Golden Gophers, give me a 12 for Max Brosmer. Now, coming up next here on the show, we got to talk about the NFC because, honestly, the NFC is completely wide open. There is no true powerhouse. I would still probably have to chalk it up to the Detroit Lions being that powerhouse in the NFC, but it is completely wide open. So we'll talk about that here in a second. Also, some big-time news. Zadarius Smith, edge rusher of the Philadelphia Eagles, he did end up retiring earlier today. So the Eagles, they're going to be without another edge. He was actually leading them in sacks this year, so that's going to be something to monitor. But coming up next, I do want to dive into the NFC and why it is just completely wide open and why the Vikings have a good chance to go on a run this year in the playoffs. But before we do so, I got to tell you guys about today's presenting sponsor, and that is Prize Picks. Now, you and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this football season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. And if you guys download the Prize Picks app today, plug in that promo code CLNS. We'll hook you guys up with $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Now, Prize Picks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning you can pick up to the same player 3 times in the same lineup. If you want to pick more on Josh Allen's pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns, now you can pick all of them in the same lineup only on Prize Picks. And you guys can also follow other Prize Picks players directly on the app and copy their lineups in one click. Whether it's a friend, celebrity, or someone whose picks you like, hit the follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new Feed tab on Prize Picks. So check it out. Link for it will be in the comment section and description of today's show. But download the Prize Picks app today. Use promo code CLNS. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is promo code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. But shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's show. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, now let's talk about the conference here because the NFC, there are still some very, very good football teams. I think the NFC is an incredibly, deep conference this year, but there is still no top dog. And we can start off with the NFC North here. The NFC North is actually the only division where in the whole NFL where they don't have a team below 500. And obviously, if the Bears lose later on tonight to the Commanders, that won't be the case. But the Packers coming in at 3-1-1. They definitely have some red flags on their teams. They don't love their secondary, and Jordan Love, still a very polarizing player, very hit or miss. And then the Detroit Lions, they catch the injury bug, almost just as bad as we do. Like, their whole secondary is pretty much beat up. And I just feel like the Lions, even though they're still a very, very, very good football team, their offense is still fantastic. Still just defensively, I don't really love what I'm seeing from Detroit. And then the Vikings coming at 3-2. Again, if you could somehow beat the Eagles, move to 4-2, you got a really good chance to still win this division. But then if we look across to the NFC East, for example, like the Philadelphia Eagles, they're reeling right now. Saquon Barkley hasn't been the same guy. Jalen Hurts hasn't been playing good football. There's so much drama around that football team, which is shocking considering they won the Super Bowl about 7 months ago. But A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, they want the ball more, and there's just drama around that team. And then Washington Commanders, they're still pretty much a wild card this year in the NFC. I think it's just going to come down to them getting healthier. But then the Dallas Cowboys, they got one of the worst defenses in the league. Now, there'll still be a problem once they get CeeDee Lamb back. They'll be a good offense. And the Giants, 2-4 football team, they're scrappy, but still, none of these teams, in my opinion, are true Super Bowl contenders as it stands right now. And then even in the NFC South, like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're 5-1. They're a very good football team, but they caught the injury bug. Bucky Irving, Emeka Ibuka, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, they have backup offensive linemen all across the field. So even though they're 5-1, they're still a vulnerable football team. And then, Panthers, even though they're 3-3, I'm not a believer in them. Falcons, Saints, they're both bad football teams. Still can't get over the Vikings loss to the Falcons. That's going to, really haunt me, especially if that keeps us out of the playoffs. But, I'm not really too concerned about any of these teams. And then NFC West, I will say, Seattle Seahawks, if I had to probably put my money who the best team is in the NFC, it's probably Seattle. I like how they're playing on both sides of the ball. Jackson Smith, he is one of the better receivers in the league. I think he's making a conversation to be in the same category as Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. The Rams, they're still an issue. Like, the Rams are a very good football team, and honestly, they just own the Minnesota Vikings. So I wouldn't feel comfortable, the Vikings squaring off with them in a potential playoff matchup. But Cardinals, they're a joke of the team. They're still 2-4. But point being, there is no top dog in this NFC. That is still very much up for grabs. And the Vikings do have a chance over the next 10 games to rip off a lot of wins. Even though this schedule, like if we were looking at it a couple weeks ago, we're saying, man, we would be lucky to go, 1-3 over these next 4 games. But I expect the Vikings to give the Eagles some fits at home. I will probably be picking them to win that football game. You're coming off the bye. You should be getting Blake Cashman back. Hopefully, you get Andrew Van Ginkel back. And then also, hopefully, you get guys like Donovan Jackson, maybe Brian O'Neill. Obviously, big question mark at the quarterback position. But then the Chargers, like TBD, if Joe Alt's out there, they won't have Amari and Hampton. Now, obviously, they have one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but that's a very winnable game. In Detroit, probably 7-point underdogs in that game. That's going to be a tough one. But then the Ravens at home. Now, that Ravens game could get a little dicey because you could also see Baltimore, like, they're probably going to try to rip off a lot of wins in a row, obviously, since they're 1-5. Now, Lamar, he'll be back week 8 following that bye. But then you got the Bears at home, in Green Bay, in Seattle, at home against the Commanders. And you got the Cowboys and Giants on the road. Like, even though this 10-game stretch looked a lot more challenging a couple weeks ago, it is still very challenging. But it's not as, daunting as it seemed back in like week 5, for example. Now, this was big time news around Darius Smith. He did announce his retirement, which was a complete shocker. Now, I would also keep your eyes out this week for potentially the Eagles making a move for another edge rusher. Obviously, Howie Roseman, one of the most aggressive GMs in the NFL, but also watch out for them maybe making a move at corner because Quinion Mitchell, their top corner, is probably not going to play. That means they're going to have Ringo and Adoree Jackson trying to guard Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. It could be me at quarterback. It could be producer Dylan at quarterback. It frankly does not matter when you have Justin Jefferson and Addison going against those two guys. So this is going to be a big-time spot for the Vikings. Massive, massive game. Now, we will be live here later today on the channel, breaking down the Eagles game more in depth and also talking about some trade rumors, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. But we also appreciate you guys watching today's show. If you guys made it to the end, just hit me with a skull down below in the comment section. We appreciate all of you guys for watching. See you guys next time. Let's go Vikes.